So yeah, and I found this article yesterday by accident because I was trying to clarify what Skinner is trying to say for myself, and I just found this article, and I thought that it was that had a very nice summary at some point.
Yeah,
So perhaps you find convenient as well.
yeah, I did.
Okay.
Just generally, when you find, because I have previously been like other people have suggested to me to try and go to the internet and look for summaries of some of these
Yeah.
authors' work.
Yeah.
But like, do you type in? Because I struggle to find.
Yeah.
Well, really, if
Yeah.
if it's not a well-known text, there's not.
I have it here because I would like to show it to you how I did it yesterday, right? Because this is how I found this article. So if I remember correctly, I found so Skinner and macro. So this is the internet site of my online library. Okay.
Okay.
Macro regions. So I'm looking for Skinner and macro regions, and then what I did. So and what I usually do. I go to resource type, and I'm looking for only the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then those are the reviews other academics have written on Skinner's work, or that are referencing Skinner's work. So I went through this list, and I just opened probably all of these documents, and I just saw the abstract. I just read the abstract, and I was like, okay, this is not relevant, this is not relevant. And at some point, within 10 minutes, I had run into this article I sent you yesterday, and I thought, wow, it had even like 2 pages summarizing the whole work he did. And this is how I find it. So I'm just going on my library, I'm just putting the book, some keywords or whatever, because this Skinner and macro regions actually are two things that you're always going to find together. Apparently he kind of invented this kind of anthropological way of looking into history. So for me it was a little bit easier. But then I'm just going to the review section. So I'm just telling them to only show me who has reviewed his work. And then I'm just trying to find something that's a little bit recent, not too old. So, after 2000 probably, since he wrote it in the 70s. And that was it. Does this help?
Yeah, no, that really helps.
Okay. So, and I would do the same thing for brand as well, or Bending Ma, is it Bending Ma, I think? The name?
Devin.
Devin, yeah, sorry. So I would probably also put a keyword or the title of an essay or something like this. But if I go here to reviews, here. This is by Devin. Okay, this is by Devin. But this is a review here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would just click all the reviews and open them up in different windows and just skim through them and see if somebody has a kind of nice summary about that. And I would just need one paper, just one paper to help me focus and understand what I have to be focusing on when I'm reading his text.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. So there's good. Okay. Let's go back to your essay. So I have done some work on my own here. So I have gone through it and made some comments. I have made 2 kinds of comments. The first one is in purple, and it relates to content. And the other one is on style, which is in green. Okay, so we don't have to talk about them together. And I think that you would like to prioritize content anyway. And I just wanted to make sure that you know that I'm not going to comment on your Chicago style, because I'm not accustomed to it. So I'm always working with Harvard, And Chicago style, I can recognize it when I look at it, but I don't know the intricacies of the style. So it could be that I'm just going to tell you the wrong stuff.
Okay.
If you're interested, I can prepare myself and just study the manual. But at the moment, I cannot do it.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay.
It's not a priority at this point. We can always discuss it close to the next exam essay.
Okay. But you will have to let me know if you want me to comment on that a little bit prior to whatever date we have for the essay, so I can study the manual and do a couple of tries on my own. Okay.
Sure.
This is the main kind of marking scheme that they use for your essay. I believe that, but this, correct me if I'm wrong. I have the impression that if you want a first, you will need at least one category, one of the criteria, to be on the outstanding. So either argument or historiography or structure, writing or presentation. So something should go on the outstanding in order to go into the first. I have the impression. So this is how they do it at my school. So one of them should be on the upper level, but I'm not exactly sure about that. So if you have everything good, I have the impression that it's just going to be a high 2-1.
Right.
But this you can ask your professor just to make sure, okay? And I don't think that you're far away from outstanding in many occasions. I really read your essay, and yesterday I was just having dinner, and I just skimmed through it because that was the point that you just sent to me, and it just read so good. And there are some moments of clarity in there that I think that you do an amazing job. I will tell you what I thought that was really good. Then there are a couple of things that your professor noted here. So about the clear structure, the good understanding of the literature, which is very obvious, and you have been able to communicate how well in the literature you are. And this is not an easy thing to do. And then I believe that what brought you to an acceptable level in terms of analysis and argument, and they didn't keep you on the good level or even spring you to the outstanding level, was the limitations. It was not clear. We have discussed about it. We had discussed about it before, so I know that you were aware of it. But it needed, I believe, more straightforward, right in your face. Those are my limitations. You remember we have been talking about this kind of paragraph that it's going to say, okay, this is my data, those are the limitations. You have done a good work and just spreading them around. This is an even more sophisticated way of talking about the limitations. So this is a kind of higher level of writing. So this is not necessarily bad, but if you go in this kind of track, then it would be good if you were going to signpost it very clearly that here I'm talking about the limitation. Yeah. So it was almost like an afterthought, at the end of the paragraph, and it shouldn't be like an afterthought. So this is why I think that it's a woman, your professor, right?
My teacher,
Your teacher.
Past teachers that mark it, and she marks it.
So this is why she says here that she's not certain if you have understood it, because it's obvious that you are talking about it, so you have some kind of understanding, but the depth of the understanding, I don't think that it comes through if she hasn't talked to you in person about it, like I have. Okay? So this is one part that I agree with that. The second thing is, she has this kind of limitations about the height, which is good. Then I'm not sure what she means here. GDP per capita and real wages were statistical and not considered subjective well-being. So I'm not sure what she means here. So if she could give you an example about that, it would be great, because your whole essay was about quantitative data. So it would have been statistical. And I'm not sure what she means. It would be good to clarify that, because it's something that you could use later on in the exam or take some notes for the next essay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just I would ask her about that.
Yeah.
Then her other point with which I also agree, it's that GDP per capita and real incomes are too similar for indicators. You remember we had talked about it, that in a sense it's the same kind of methodology. Not always, but they will just guide you to the same kind of results, or they're going to use the same kind of data series or whatever. So, and this is why I was trying to, you remember when we're trying to find what kind of indicators you were going to use, perhaps one is GDP per capita and the other one is going to be not wages, but industrialization, for example, or something else. So a new kind of indicator that would bring you to a different kind of space of discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with her on that as well. But I think that you have done an amazing job in your essay, and I was like not surprised, but I was very impressed by the clarity of how you brought the wages in the discussion, as if you were discussing something very different. So you said, I have, I will show you later what I mean, and then here she says that. She's not certain if you have understood that GDP is an aggregate level data and GDP per capita micro level data. I have the impression here that there is something wrong in the write-up of her comments, because in my understanding, both GDP and GDP per capita are aggregate level data.
Well, I was when I read this, I just couldn't understand what she was making. She meant by that.
Yeah.
Because from an economics point of view, they're both aggregate data.
Yeah. GDP per capita, one could argue that it's even more aggregate data because the population statistics comes in and stuff like this. But it could be that she meant here GDP and wages.
Yeah.
Okay, because the wages, if you go to the real wages, this is microdata. Especially the way that you have presented it, like in the urban centers and the urban areas of China. So it could be that this is what she means, but I'm not certain. So I would also raise a question mark there. Okay. Now for the presentation, because she gave you an acceptable kind of level here, it could be, I have the impression that she did that because of your reference styling. So presentation usually is about referencing. So how academically apt is your document?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is very important on third year. And especially if you have a professor or a teacher who looks into that with a lot of detail, you have to satisfy them.
Yeah.
Even if you believe that it's not as important and stuff, it doesn't matter. I also would agree with you, but if you have this kind of teacher, you have to address that. And it's a very easy way of addressing that,
Okay.
Okay. So I will just go very fast through the content notes I have made here, which are perhaps a little bit different from your teachers as well. Whenever I have ticks, 2 ticks or 3 ticks, it means that it's really, really good, in my opinion. Okay. So the first thing, and so I'm going through the purple notes.
Yeah.
The first thing that I would draw a question mark and not a tick would be the use of the word nation. I had told you this before. China, when we look at it from a West-centric perception and point of view, we can call it a nation, but this is very West-centric view. They don't view themselves like that. I'm very sensitive about this topic, so it could be that it's only me that I'm peculiar about it, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to meet other people thinking about this as well. It's very difficult to call them a nation. You can call them a state, you can, it's a kind of organized polity. That's fine, but it's not a nation state.
Okay.
And Debin Ma makes this point in his essay in this Aoki publication. He particularly says, I think it's on the second or the third page on top of his essay, that he says that China is not a nation state, but it's a family state. It's something between a collective and individualist state. Okay, so it would show some kind of deeper understanding of the materials and the area that you're researching right now. So even if you think that it's not important, it would reflect good in your essay if you show your teacher that you understand, wait a second, we're talking about a state, we're talking about empire or whatever, but I'm very particular about what kind of terms we're using here, okay?
Yeah.
So then I think that this sentence here, there is no clear consensus as the economic trends, blah, blah, blah. So this is very good. There is no clear consensus. You start already by pointing out that there are limitations in the data and that there are different opinions. This is very good. Living standards over time, this I just noted it and highlighted it because I don't know where this comes in your essay. Are you going to be talking about general trends, like, or are you going to be talking about the living standards over time? You can.
I think basically because, like you know how when we agreed to what indicators I would look at, we talked about using industrialization. Because of the lack of timing, I had to scrap industrialization and use real wages.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, I did think that she was going to make the point of the fact that I've used very similar indicators, and I thought she would mark me down for that.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me, in the introduction, state that I'm going to look at 3 indicators that give an overall view of living standards, which in itself is a indicator. I mean, so living standards was the main. Maybe I didn't phrase it clearly, and because it obviously my point hasn't got across. But what I wanted to do was say that I wanted to focus on living standards, and to focus on living standards, I'm going to look at these 3 individual factors. Or that was my approach, because obviously I understood that with the lack of timing, I couldn't do industrialization.
It's a very valid approach.
Yeah.
It's a valid approach, but then you would have to define economic trend as, in your essay, for the purpose of this essay, I will define economic trend as the level of living standards over time. So not the overall direction. So this is where you got me lost a little bit there. So are you talking about the overall direction of the economy, or are you talking about the living standards? Because living standards is a very particular way of looking at the economy. Yeah. Right? So, and this is also where living standards go into more micro data.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to be talking about micro kind of observations, but then you're using aggregate data like GDP per capita, or GDP in general, then there is this kind of, what are you trying to say here? Are you clear about what kind of indicators you're using? Based on what kind of series you're using. Yeah. So it's a small thing, and I'm pretty sure you know that it was also because it was late in the night that you were, over with that, and you were just trying to make the best you could, and I think you have. But this is something that I would be a little bit flustered about. Yeah. Are we going to be looking at that? Then you just say something. I believe it's important at this level of writing, when you say a trend, so next to it, right? A trend that encompasses many other important features of an economy. If you say this, you have to put such as. When you write in an essay, many scholars argue this. Say such as this scholar. When you say many features in the economy, such as. And use only one example. You don't have to put the whole kind of variety of examples that you could use if you had, 10,000 dissertation to write, but something just to give a direction, and that you are not abstract, that you are actually trying to make a generalized comment based on concrete knowledge. Okay, and then you bring population increases in there, which. It's correct, it's right, but then you bring another kind of element at the end of your introduction in there. And I was like, okay, are we going to be talking about now population increases as another indicator? You meant it more like, tell me.
It was more of just a summary of the different kind of what's happening in the 18th, 19th, and 20th. To me, these points were the most important of each century. So the population increases in the 18th century explain a lot of what happened in terms of the data.
Yeah.
Social discontent and the falling living standards was the main thing that happened in the 19th, and then economic success. So I basically wanted to say that the country it was mid-level, it was kind of stagnant, then dropped, and then kind of rose again. That was the main trend that I was trying to get at. And I just wanted a quick sentence at the start, to just summarize what I would have gone into later on. But yeah, I think that's probably why, because it doesn't really flow in with the rest of the introduction.
Yeah, I know what you were trying to say. You just have to find a way, especially in your introduction. You have to show your teacher that you are in command of the material and you have a very clear picture of what you're going to be writing about. This is going to be even more important at the exams. At the exams, your introduction has to be very clear, very in command, very in control. Because the moment that the marker starts with the question mark, okay, does this student really knows what we're going to be talking about? It's going to start reading the essay with the question mark in the mind, in his or her mind. You don't want to go there, okay? What it's missing, in my opinion, from the introduction, it's the argument. You tried there to have, the summary of how the essay is going to go, but it's not arguing something. In your conclusion, it's very clear that you have an argument, and you have had an argument from the very beginning. In your introduction, this is missing. If it becomes apparent in your conclusion that you have an argument, just take your argument from your conclusion, copy paste it in your introduction in the worst case scenario. Yeah. So and try to signpost this, that I will argue, I shall argue, the essay shall argue, whatever. But try to say this is what you are going to be reading about.
Yeah.
So the last 2 lines or 3 lines are almost an argument, only it's not signposted.
Yeah.
And it's going to help you too, just become a little bit more confident about what you're trying to write. It's going to give you a clearer direction. Okay, let me move on. Then, so the first sentence, very good topic sentence. The most conventional indicator of comparing economic trends is GDP or GDP per capita. Very good sentence. So this as a topic sentence works very well. But so this I can tell you already that stylistically this Bacon et al. Has to be written with not a capital A, but with a small a. Okay.
Yeah.
So this I'm already because it's a fast one. Then I'm just going a little bit fast because I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, you say simple to retrieve. It's not simple to retrieve in this case, and you know it very well that it's not simple to retrieve, especially for the 18th and 19th centuries, because you have written it later on. I'm just saying that the moment I see this, it's usually simple to retrieve. After USA started keeping records of GDP, but that was after the Second World War. Before that, the records are very sparse.
Yeah.
And this is what Madison's achievement is, that he has managed to somehow show a kind of GDP aggregate estimates. But it's guesswork, as you write later on in the essay. Yeah. So just be aware a little bit of this. When you write, especially in this course, Qing dynasty, and then you have in parentheses the dates, this is good. This is good. And try to learn the dates by heart. These main dates, like Ming, Qing, the communist regime later on, the nationalist regime. Try to learn this by heart, because in exams this is marks. In coursework it's not so important. It's because it's not knowledge, but it's just open book in this kind of case. But in the exams it's good. You don't need to learn all of them. Just Ming, Qing, and then the later history.
Okay.
This is an argument I'm saying here, because the last 2 lines, this is a claim, and this is good. This claim, you say that there are 2 kinds of evidence that suggest more or less stable Chinese per capita performance. This is a claim. This is an argument. This is what you're going to be. I'm just signposting it so you know what I'm talking about when I'm telling you argument. Okay. Okay. The next one. In the next paragraph, I just have one issue because at the beginning of the paragraph you use the word stagnation and later on about stability. Those two words, although they could be referring to the same thing, qualitatively they have different implications. Stagnations, it's when GDP stops, for example, to grow. And stability, it's when it just it grows at the same rate. And so it's not that it stagnated. The GDP per capita stagnated because of the population growth, of course. But but GDP per se was growing because it could accommodate for all the population growth. Right? So just be a little bit conscious about these two words. Then I have a lot of double ticks here because that was very good. I have, when you have this kind of quantitative evidence there, it's very good. When you have dates like 18th century and you're saying about which period you're writing about, this is all good. But then you're talking about GDP growth. You would have to decide in this case, are you going to be talking about GDP per capita or GDP? Those are two very different indicators. One takes into consideration population, and it could be used as a proxy for quality of living and well-being, but GDP on its own does not show any of this kind of stuff. GDP, it's only an economic indicator, very kind of dry indicator about the product of the state, but that's it. It could be that GDP is growing, but GDP per capita is falling. So just this, I would mark it as a negative thing here. I would say, okay, here the student is not clear about what the difference is, or that those two indicators are very different. Okay. I have also made here a note about C. pomerantz. You have also talked about pomerantz. Pomerantz, I just would like to remind you that it's about the California school. And I'm just telling you this because you are going to be required to know this. It's one of the very, very first things that they show in the slides of your class. The California school, the Needham thesis, all of this kind of things, they should be some kind of notes for your exams later on. This is just a reminder. It's not a negative nor a positive thing. Just a reminder for you. Blah, blah, different opinions. Okay, you're talking about population increase. This would be a very good moment to bring in the different opinions. Scholars do not necessarily agree what kind of population increase we had during that period. There are different estimates. It's Perkins, it's somebody else. I don't remember now the names, but we have different estimates that lead to different outcomes and conclusions. That would be a good time to bring it in. So I would add marks if you had this in, even in a parenthesis. Despite discrepancies in estimates between scholars, it was a significant increase in population. That would be enough. Then I have many ticks here because of the quantitative way that you're talking about stuff. It looks like you really thought about it. Then you have Chow here. Is this a reading on its own? Chow?
No.
Does it come into another reading?
Yeah.
Then you should be signposting this within Chicago kind of reference. So it has to be something like Chow in the reading of this. Just check it out. I don't know. I'm not aware of the Chicago manual, but have a look at it. Because now it looks. If I would read this paper, I would say, okay, she has read a paper written by Chow that was published in 1986, which is not true. Then I have a very big tick here because of the way that you are talking. So, however, Chow does argue that index figures provide the average for the whole country. So this is very well written, very dense, very concise. and you have an ability to write this way. It comes out in many places in your essay. You have a very nice way of summarizing very complicated texts. This is a talent, and you should capitalize on it.
Okay.
You do that very well. And considering, because I know the background, considering the pressure you were under when you were doing that, this is amazing work when you do that.
Yeah.
So for me, it takes a lot of time to write this kind of summaries, so dense and so concise. So try to capitalize on that a little bit more.
Okay.
I'm just here. I'm also saying that because you are talking about North and East, here it would be an opportunity to use Skinner in a parenthesis, in a sentence. The geographical differences between North China and the Southeast coast, for example. If you just put a sentence that's, for example, Skinner shows that North and East were out of phase when it was coming to economic development during this period, that would be enough, not more. This is also what it's going to be expected from you in the exams, not more. You just need, a kind of plug-in phrase that you can plug it in whenever you're writing about geographical differentials within China.
Yeah.
Not more. Then I have something here. I really like the way that you come into the new paragraph. This is why I have many ticks. But the topic sentence, I personally, this perhaps also a personal thing again, I never like to see new paragraphs starting with a reference. I want to see your point. What is your point? What is the point that you want to make? I don't want to know what Bacon says. Bacon is going to be used as evidence for what you want to say. But I want the personal thing from you. This is what I'm going to be. And you do it immediately afterwards.
Yeah, just a shuffle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would just reverse the order with a little bit of restructuring of the two sentences, basically. And then you have it. So try, this is my personal advice, try to introduce references after the topic sentence, not in the topic sentence. The topic sentence is yours, is your point.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I'm also writing that here I would like to see it more explicit, that you're talking about data limitation. And this, for example, would be a good occasion to bring the data limitation on the topic sentence. This paragraph is going to be about the data limitations. And then it would have been clearer. This is what I meant with signposting at the beginning of our conversation. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, evidence for GDP in this period. So, I believe, I like the personal kind of thing there, but believe in this case is a little bit too tentative. I don't care what you believe as a marker. I wouldn't care about this. I don't think that this costs you any marks, but believe is too tentative in this kind of case.
Okay.
You can say, I believe this because. If you say because and you give a reason, that's fine. But here it's more like a general feeling that you have in your stomach that this is good.
Yeah.
Academically, this doesn't fly very well. Complemented with other indicators. I'm sorry, now we are over our time. If you're in a hurry, you can let me know, okay?
Oh no, fine.
When complemented with when you say when complemented with other indicators, this is another instance where I would like you to write such as. Just put one as an example, so I know in which sphere you're moving.
Yeah.
Then the next one, this is triple tick, this is where it would make me put something into the outstanding portion of the grading. This whole, the first 5-6 lines, for me, it's really well written. The way you have summarized it, the density, the conciseness, this is good writing. Very complex, and you have made it look so easy. This is really good. But I would still not start the paragraph with the reference. I would like to see your point there. This could have come after your main point. But this kind of summarizing, I really think that you're really great at it. really great at it. I'm very impressed by it. Same thing comes later on. And you just wrote a sentence that takes you, I don't know, 4 lines, and it reads so effortlessly.
Yeah.
It's easy to read, and 4-line sentence usually are on the doughty side. This is so good. So I cannot underline enough that your skill doing that is exceptional. Then also a triple tick. So this whole paragraph is very good. Here is when you're talking about Alan again and his methodology and their methodology, which is very good. Again, the summary of how you have written it and stuff. This is really good. This could have been a review paper about Alan's work. So a part of a review part. It's so well written, in my opinion. So I was reading and I was like, that's good writing. So well done on this. Again, here it would be an opportunity to use Skinner, because Skinner, I don't know if you have already written it, but he separated the macroregions into core and peripheral. So core was the urban kind of settings within macroregions, and peripheral was the hinterland, the agrarian kind of area that was attached to this core. So basically, what Alan did, what they did, it was to go and measure the wage, the real wages within the core and not the periphery. Yeah. So that would be another nice opportunity to bring Skinner in. I'm insisting on Skinner because your course insists on Skinner, and it would be, I think, Marx. The more you bring him in.
Okay.
I have the impression that this is the case. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Then this is a good topic sentence for a paragraph. I just want to give you an example of what a good topic sentence looks like in my mind. So you haven't used the references yet, but immediately on the second sentence, which is good, but your topic sentence is your point. In light of the difficulties, so although there are difficulties with traditional measures, such as this GDP per capita and real wages, we must look at anthropometric indicators, so at other indicators, such as sites and age heaping. Perfect. Yep. It doesn't have to be complex, it doesn't have to be too smart, it just needs to say what you're going to do very clearly, but based on your own motivation, not on the references motive, but your motive. Yeah. Okay. Then I have ticks. Opium wars, make sure that if you're not referring to one specific opium war, use plural, because there were 2 opium wars. And this is historiographically, this is very important. They had different ramifications. I have, for style, I have a double tick. You have a very short sentence there. The decline reached about 162.5 centimeters in 1885. This short sentence, in between the very complicated and long sentences, it's really good. This is good style. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you did it unconsciously or consciously. If you did it consciously, well done. If you did it unconsciously, try to learn to do it consciously. Okay. This is good style. Okay, and here I just have this kind of point that your teacher also had made to limit the data, to show the limitations of the data on anthropometric measures. Okay, so it's about, you are going to find it all over the internet. Diet is also somehow hinted in Richardson's book. So it's diet, you're just going to find so many. Okay. So it would be important. Yep. Again, you have Baton, so you have the reference in your topic sentence, which I would not do. Then you have this sentence there that I have the double tick next to it. Yeah. Here, it's also very good. And this is another example of how well you write. summarizing, very dense, very concise. And then you have something that I really like. This is what I call smart referencing. You have at the end of the paragraph, you say other historical studies also support the case for blah 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 blah. And in this case, you have this such as in the parentheses. You say other historical studies, for example, Dor, Brand et al.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what I meant.
Okay.
This is a smart referencing. This is marks. This is not something that you're going to be using in exams, because you are not going to be, I think, required to use so much referencing in the exams. But in coursework, this is good, and it's good writing in general.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a very good paragraph, and the conclusion, I believe that it was that close of being brilliant, that close. If you had a little bit, and this is what I had told you in our previous session, if you had a little bit more time, if you had started a little bit earlier with the essay, and you were at this stage 2 days before you had to give it in, just 2 days before, you would have enough time for all these materials to sink in and to know exactly what you want to say. And then I believe that this conclusion would have been brilliant. I think that you got a lot of marks because of this conclusion. So I think that many reasons for putting on your analysis and argument on the good bucket, it was because of your conclusion. It was a good conclusion.
Yeah.
But it could have been outstanding with the materials we have and what you talk about here. So again, you have stagnation here. Just be a little bit careful. The reason I wouldn't say that it was outstanding, it was because the interpretation of your arguments was missing. So for example, where it says stagnation, right? Yeah. You say, comparing the three quantitative economic indicators, we have seen that GDP per capita saw stagnation in the 18th century, whilst real wages were comparable to Europe, but both then saw decline following the 18th century. So what? Yes, you made the point, you made the observation. How is this observation relevant to the question? What does this mean?
Yeah.
If you had said in the next sentence, this means that during the 18th century, for example, now, this means that during the 18th century, one could say, arguably, that the generic economic trend in China was upwards or was stable. That would have been it. It doesn't need more, but it needs this phrase to show motive.
Yeah, agreed.
So this is why I think that you missed an opportunity here to have an outstanding conclusion, because everything is there, and I know that everything is in your head because it's within the essay.
Yeah.
I just would like you to have started a little bit earlier, so all of these thoughts had clarified, and then they would have gone in there effortlessly. You would have known that, yeah, this is what I'm trying to say. The next one, where I say meaning, 1/2, it's because you almost have the meaning there. So you say, however, age keeping measures recover. So this brought light to the puzzle. So this is the sentence I was looking for. This means that there is a puzzle at that time because of low physical capital and high human capital.
Yeah.
And then, but that was only half. So what does this mean then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you interpreted the data about the anthropometric measures.
Yeah.
In the puzzle, but then how you interpret this puzzle? How does this answer the question you were asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is half there, the meaning. So here I think that it was a really good conclusion. Only if you had a little bit more time to clarify your thoughts in there. So the argument is here clear. So this argument, you could have just copy pasted in a sense, in your introduction, a little bit on a simpler form. You wouldn't have to have all these kind of details that you have in your conclusion, because then you have already argued, you have all the details, so that's all fine. But in a simpler form, that would have been the essay will argue, or I shall argue in the essay. in your introduction.
Yeah.
More direct to the question. Yeah, also the conclusion would have been better if it was addressing the question more directly, more straightforward. This is part of the this means thing.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
means try to use the keywords from the question every time. So this means that the generic economic trends during that period were like this. So yeah, and then I have this comment about what does all mean. So this means this. Think about this means. Try to be consistent with these means. At the end of your paragraphs, even if you are in the middle of your essay, many times it makes sense to use it at the end of the paragraph. You know, you had the topic sentence, then you had your references, you showed some observations based on the evidence, and then you say, this means. This is why I said it. This is why I just made you read this thing.
Okay.
This is the thing. Okay. And then for bibliography, here I just have a thing that Chow, because I really thought that Chow was independent reading. Obviously, it's not. And then for really good essays, you know, here you have used Peyton, Brandt, Cohen, Fairbank, Madison, Richardson. Those are all main readings from weeks 1, 2, perhaps 3.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But when you wrote the essay, when you had to give in the essay, you were already at week 8, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah? This registered in the marker's mind. It almost looks like you just picked up this topic because you had done, you know, you started well in the course and then you stopped. You stopped the reading. Try to be a little bit more and show variety in your knowledge by spreading it between the weeks. So use one source from week 1, one source from week 3, one source from week 4. They're very similar sources. So don't worry about that. You're going to find, you know, similar data in all of these cases. And what I would like to see, it's more Chinese references.
Yeah.
I think that if you do this, but I'm very in this case, I'm also as particular as I'm with the usage of the term nation. When we're analyzing Chinese culture, Chinese economy, I want to see that somebody had the guts and the sensitivity and the consciousness to see their perspective, because it's a very different perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would like to see, you know, this is what Cohen writes about. Yeah.
Yeah.
His whole book is about this: how West-centric we are when we analyze China. So it's part of your course, basically.
Okay.
And so try to be a little bit sensitive about this. But that would be it. I think that overall you did a really good job, like a really good job. It was almost not recognizable, the paper you showed me at the end and what you did here. You're very fast in making things work.
Yeah.
And you have this kind of talent to write very complex sentences in this simple form and just summarize a whole paper in 4 lines. This is a scholar's quality. Okay. Capitalize on that. I don't know what you're planning to do later on in your career, but whatever you are going to do later on in your career, you're going to be a writer. You're going to be asked to write stuff. It doesn't matter even if you go like in the private sector and do and become a manager or an economic advisor or whatever, you're going to have to write. And you have, I believe, the good ability to write very complex stuff in simple ways. This is something I don't have, for example. I have struggled with that. So for me, it takes a lot of time to do that.
Okay.
At the end, it reads very well what I'm writing. But for me, this is editing. You know, sometimes I have 10 drafts only to make it read simpler. You do that effortlessly. So it's more like an intuitive thing for you.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do later, but try to do something with writing, I would suggest, because you do that well. You do that very well. Um, I was very impressed. And based on this, I think that you can really, really rock the next essay. If you let yourself time enough to reflect on what you want to say, to let things sink in. You have a good intuition, from the very first time we met, you wanted to use this height and age heaping, because your gut was telling you that this is interesting, so you are interested in this kind of stuff. So just follow it, but let also yourself digest it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. That was it. Do you have any further questions or?
No, I think we went through it really thoroughly. So now I know the things to work on now.
Okay.
And hopefully I can now channel this into the next one.
Yeah.
And try and get. I do agree in the fact that I think everything was in the essay. It was just needed, make one more day to shuffle it around and make it a bit better.
Yeah.
But I think it was good in what it was at the final end. But I definitely understand how I could have improved that.
Yeah. So that was not the first, in my opinion. So I do agree with that. It was not the first, and in my opinion, it was not a high second. I think that you have amazing abilities. You're a very talented person. You're very smart, because I know in what kind of time frames you did all this. But this is not what brings you grades. At the end of the day, it's going to be the product you create. So I wouldn't give you marks because you're smart. You are smart. What are you going to do with that? You know how many people I have met in my life that have been so much smarter than I am, real geniuses, really talented, and they ended up nowhere because they just didn't put in the work.
Yeah.
You put in the work also, so this is good. You're a hardworking person, I believe. I mean, I can see that here. But also just give yourself the opportunity to digest all this stuff. It's not a luxury in this case. It's just being fair to yourself.
Yeah.
Treat yourself with a little bit more kindness. You ask too much from yourself when you ask yourself, to write all this kind of stuff in this kind of complexity.
Yeah.
But you don't give yourself the satisfaction of, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Just do that, and yourself is going to reward you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Are we going to meet again when you're done with the stuff, with the rest of the stuff, or how do you want to proceed?
Yeah. So I think tomorrow should be able to meet. What time? What time works best for you tomorrow?
In the morning, I have an appointment at the hospital for my doggy at 10. So I will be back, and then I'm going to try to take her for a big walk if she's able to go. So I will be available after 2 or 3 o'clock.
After 2 or 3, okay. Are you able to do? I'm not sure. Are you able to do evening appointments?
Yeah. I'm going to be available these days the whole day now.
Okay.
Except if I have appointments like this.
Okay, perfect. Am I able to let you know this evening? Or
Yeah. Do that.
To see my progress.
Yes. But do let me know tonight. Because I also have to, based on our meeting, I'm going to schedule another meeting with somebody else for a lesson.
Okay, sure. Yeah? I'll let you know by latest tonight.
Yeah, don't worry. As long as it's tonight, because the other person is also a little bit flexible. So.
Okay.
But I should tell her tomorrow in the morning. Okay, good. Yeah. So good job again. Well done. I'm personally very impressed. Just try to get into the readings a little bit more. Try to finish the tasks we set we have set for tomorrow. Because I would like to talk about the techniques tomorrow.
Okay.
And see what feels better for you. Okay?
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
All right then. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much. Okay, looking forward for tomorrow. And I'm going to put all of this data and the recording, and I'm going to send you a link on transfer server. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
See you.
See you.